Alrighty, we are talking about conversations with people close to you in your life and how you should have deeper conversations with these people early on in your relationship to make
Even
sure,
if it's uncomfortable.
even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's awkward, like I don't like it when you fart in bed, things like that. Like have those deep conversations early on so that you've got a nice relationship.
Neil's bursting there. Go for it, Neil.
But early on, you might have those love blinders on that you don't see it, and then later it becomes something you're like, why did I accept this? And now it's too far down the line.
Yeah.
How do I change it?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's obviously close relationship, but I mean, there's also colleagues, work, or whatever. There's also relationships there. Sometimes people neglect conversations early on or don't have open things, and that leads to, I mean, you'll know in a business when you've got employees or you've got staff or members or clients, and then it leads to something later where you're like, this maybe something if I had done in the beginning would have been a lot easier to handle.
Yeah, so should we try go through the people in your lives and then just give a couple of pointers on what you should maybe talk about beforehand? One of the things that I always joke with my my very close partner with, and that would be Victoria, is that like people get a relationship and because of their religious values, whatever it is, they don't live together first. So like the parents like don't allow them to live together, and then they get married and now they can live together, and then you realize like, oh, this oak doesn't really clean himself all the time, or he lives like a messy idiot. And then like now you get married, you've now committed yourself to the life of this person. You're like, oh, this oak is actually retarded.
It's pretty intense. Yeah.
Or this person. So I mean, it's even down to that. So like the close person in your life is someone that you actually want to try live with, maybe try foster a dog with, or a goldfish or something. Like try look after something together in the same household for a while before you go have kids, or jump into the deep end
For sure.
of a relationship, and then 10, 20 years later you're like, oh, I shouldn't have been in this kind of thing.
I think something that I figured out more recently and I wish I'd figured out early on in my life, is there's a difference between my perception of what setting boundaries is and what setting boundaries actually is. And I always thought of setting boundaries are these sort of walls that you put up to keep people out. Whereas the more I've lived and the more I've loved, I've realized setting boundaries is actually a set of acceptable parameters of how you invite someone in. You're saying, I want you in my life, and this is how it can work. It's not, I don't want you, or if you don't reach these standards, then I don't want you. It's saying, this is what I need, and I would love you to be that person. And if you're not, you're welcome to not. But if you are, then it's going to be compatible. And I think if we can reframe the idea of setting boundaries within personal relationships in a nice way of, I'm trying to build a life with you. This is how it can work. Does that work for you? And you have those open conversations rather than, this is not acceptable to me. That's not a boundary. That's just being a douche. Like there's a big difference between those two things. And I think if you can approach difficult conversations from the point of, I'm setting this boundary with you because I love you and I want a long-term successful relationship with you, that's a healthy thing. And I think it sets the tone of the conversation to be constructive. Because I think the big deal with bringing up difficult topics is as soon as you bring up whatever it is, the other person gets defensive and it's a sensitive issue. And then it doesn't actually become a constructive conversation. If anything, it just makes things worse. And then you try and bring it up a couple of days later or weeks or months or years later. First thing that they think about is the previous time, and that feeling comes back. So I think it's very important to set the tone.
But I think the thing that you said there, that defensive thing, is like that with anything. So I mean, we can go from your closest relationship being like your partner to family, friends, and then like clients. The worst thing that we try to do with our clients is to make them feel defensive. They're coming to you with a problem, and they're gonna like, oh, I'm coming to you, I've got a weight problem.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, listen, I think you're fat.
Stop
like
eating
you've got
so
to
much.
stop, like
Get off the couch. Yeah.
It's a very fine line to be like, this is what you need to do. I mean, I've even had clients come to me where they're like, I don't want to talk about this because I know you as a person are going to tell me just to do this. And I'm like, stop becoming defensive. All I'm trying to do is show some support and help. So I was trying to guide this friend of mine. He's got cancer, and immediately family was like, God, don't put pressure on the situation. He's very touchy about it. Like he's sensitive about his weight. He's sensitive about like the years that he's gone through and this and that. Like, guys, I'm just trying to help. Myself and him, we're having a casual conversation. he's been texting me like some photos of what he's eating. I'm not jumping onto anybody trying to save their life. Like, he's been dealing with cancer for so long. I'm just trying to help. And they all got very defensive of like, Goth, what are you doing? Don't do that. I'm like, leave myself and him. We're just having a casual chat. And the whole week, the last 2 weeks, he sends me food updates. We've been chatting. I send him a link to this to go listen to. It's just a casual chat. But that defensive mechanism is, I think, what a lot of people have to try work around, or try and be open to, like, hey, like, I'm not criticizing you to that degree. Let's just take it easy, like take a chill pill.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's like, even when Ben was saying, was having boundaries and letting the person know, like, you got to have conversations around those boundaries, because sometimes people will just go along with it because they want to please or still keep that person happy. And they don't even ask a question. They're just doing it because they feel like this is what's needed to make this relationship go forward. And I think then later on, they might butt heads against that same boundary that was in place later, because maybe at that point in time now it's not working, or so they're feeling frustrated with something, and now they don't understand why this is still something. So, having conversations and explaining yourself why this is important to you allows that person to understand. And then at a later point, they can come back, or they can have that sort of understanding and not cause resentment or block when it comes up to later points. Because those type of things will then lead to frustration, and then that leads to angst, and causes things to go in the wrong direction. And I've experienced that myself, where it's like you have something in place and you've kind of like early days, you're like, okay, well, this works for me now. I'm going to just go along. All right. And then you hit that later on, but now you're struggling to understand, and you don't see the benefit in that. And then that's important to that person. And you've got to understand, well, okay, why is that? And if I don't have that, it becomes a long road.
Yeah, because I mean, all the relationships are like, if you just have a look at the closest person to you, you're very different to that person in many ways. So it's like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm together with this person because you've got so much in common. Yeah, you got a few things in common, but you can have a relationship with someone where everything's completely different, but you've set those boundaries around certain things that you enjoy and that they enjoy, and you try and accommodate them to a certain degree of like, this still brings me joy. So hypothetically, like with Vicky still smoking, she smokes outside, she washes her hands, she brushes her teeth before she even goes close to the kids, comes close to me, and and that's a boundary that I set way on in the beginning, because I don't like smoking. She does like smoking. I'm not going to be the person to tell her to stop, but she's got a very good kind of smoking, like, yeah, like she knows that it affects a lot of things, but she knows that it's killing her, it's bad for her, but she doesn't let it affect other things. And that's little boundaries that you have to set early on. And there's obviously other things, like simple things like cleaning up, packing the dishwasher, things that, like, certain traits that I've got slightly OCD that she doesn't have, and then like vice versa. She does things this way, and she'll just put another coffee pot in because her coffee was not enough. She by mistake ran the coffee pot through. She'll just put another one in, run this much coffee through it, and let it go to waste. Where I'll like take the old pot out, put it back in, run hot water through it just to get more water through it. Like, little elements like that can irritate the relationship. So you got to find out things with these people, family, friends, and just talk about them. Just be like, hey man, like, hey dude, just put the weights back. Like, if we're training together, like, we'll use the same bike. I'm sweating profusely on Neil's bike. He's like, no dude, it's fine, just use my same towel. Like, instead of us changing towels, I don't mind sharing a towel with Neil. We're not going to go wipe our faces with it, whatever. Like, there's those little things that you can do together, but you don't want to go just take Neil's towel and put it over something, and then like I've actually creeped into his barrier of like, oh no, someone else's sweat. Like, there's a lot of little things like that around friends and family that you need to be careful of. Yeah. But just tell the guy, hey man, do you mind if I use the same towel? No, dude, get your own towel. Okay, sweet. Yeah. Like, there's little things. But I mean, that goes with like friends are a close one. Like, you can really have an irritable friend that you put up with a lot of things with him, and if you just set boundaries from early on, you're like, oh, okay, that's chill.
I think you should also be willing to reassess your boundaries. I think that saying this is my boundary, if you don't fit in, get lost, is not productive. And I think there's a very fine line you walk between being a narcissist and having healthy boundaries. So I think that's something to be willing to, like, you have this no smoking boundary, but you're willing to accommodate her because, it's something that's important to her, and she's willing to do what she needs to do to make it fit your life. So I think that's the gold standard. It's like, how do we find and build things within our relationship where we're meeting each other where we're at. Because I think just saying like, if you don't fit in with my boundaries and this is not going to work, you're never going to have a healthy relationship. That's not healthy either.
Yeah.
That's the other end of actually just poople, and you don't actually deserve people in your life. But there are also things that you should have non-negotiable boundaries on. And now it's about finding where is that line. Like, if Vicky goes and hooks up with another dude, that's maybe not something that we can make. How do I become more accepting of this? I mean, there are relationships, obviously, that do that, and that's fine. That's their decisions. But you do have to have some hard cutoffs. And where those hard cutoffs are, I think, define the relationship. And it's about figuring that out and being willing to kind of ebb and flow with each other, having open conversations the whole time, figuring out these are the hard boundaries that I'm not willing to cross, you're not willing to cross. Does this work? Yes, we can make that work between us. We're probably going to have a long, healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Or no, let's end things now. Or we're just not going to talk about it and see when it blows up, because it's not if, it's when.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is that like if something bugs you now, say it, because it's going to pop up in 3 years' time, and now it's a big issue.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson has a cool saying. He says, "Conflict delayed is conflict multiplied." I think that's very true. I think there's a lot of the conflict in my life, had I brought it up early, in friendships and business, actually wouldn't have been such a big deal. But I people pleased, like Neil says. I just dealt with it because I tried to do what I needed to do and be the bigger person and whatever it is, and try and accept subordination in business or in friendships. And then down the line, it became a big deal.
So I think what you can do there, if you are a people pleaser, like, I mean, you mentioned it now, like I feel like I am a people pleaser as well, is if you find someone that's like around you that you seem that they are just trying to please people, like be the person that calls them out on it as well. Vicky's a big part of my life with that as well. Like she'd be like, listen, just, don't I don't know, don't sugarcoat this, just say this to this person, do this,
Yes.
like stop pleasing the situation. And that's helped me over the last couple of years, where I have been offloading onto her a few things, and she's like, nope, I think you should just do this. And she said sometimes like, no, like take it easy with that person, keep sugarcoating this or that just for your relationship,
I think that we're maybe too careful to not cross a boundary. Like sometimes it's worth speaking your mind, even if you offend that person and maybe saying too much or going too far, and going back and saying, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Like you're allowed to apologize. You're allowed to be human and say that really was over the top. And I genuinely don't feel good about that. And I would like your forgiveness. That's okay. But we pander so far on the side of never wanting to offend anyone that we actually miss out on maybe pushing it too far, and then that opening up a conversation of, and also opening up the chance to be humble and say, I'm sorry. And then your partner or the person you're dealing with gets to see a side of you of humility, of like, oh, geez, like this person is actually willing to say, I'm sorry, and put his ego aside for this.
Yeah, we'll just be a bit like just being a bit vulnerable as well. Sorry, I'm just mixing my into my.
Yeah, that sounds very like pee on this microphone.
Yeah, but I think there's also points where it's like sometimes if you actually want to be that person's true friend, like there's some stuff that needs to be said to them, and they might resent you for it for a long period of time. But what you said in that moment might have saved them a whole lot of other pain later. Like I had this conversation with a friend the other day, and he was saying he had this friend who got into a bit of like drugs and whatever the case was, and was going down the wrong road. So he went behind the friend's back to talk to the friend's dad and sort of like have a conversation with him. And the friend then never spoke to him for like a good almost decade later. But in the end, it might have been that would help the friend change his path. And if he didn't do that, he wouldn't have had a friend anyway, because who knows what path he would have gone down. And they can come back later and still have a conversation about it.
It's very true.
So, there's sometimes that's a hard conversation you have, and you're running the risk of losing a friendship, but you're also saving a friend's life potentially in that same point in time. Maybe he won't be your friend, but he's still alive because of what you maybe did in that moment.
Yeah, I think I've been doing that with like a lot of relationships just in and around me. I've been obviously helping clients and some family and things like that. And by just being a little bit more open and like saying the wrong things, like, ooh, that was a little bit too deep on that. And then just having the vulnerability to be like, okay, I'm actually sorry I said it this way, but it had to be said.
Yeah.
Stop sugarcoating the idea of this one client, they are an alcoholic, and they're doing quite well. And then every time I bring up just saying the word sober, they kind of get offended by it. And they call me out like, listen, stop using the word sober in our conversations. And I'm like, but it has to be said.
Mm.
The word has to be used because it's the only way that this conversation happens. Like, so by sticking to something to let that person know that you're not going to shy away from your perspective on this thing, just lets them kind of like, okay, this person's always going to be a little bit harsh in this, but they do have my benefits to it, or like they do have my needs in it.
And I think you also need to give people the right to leave. Like, if you are always being people pleasing and always within your friendships, maybe not saying that you don't want to offend because you don't want them to feel offended or whatever. Sometimes you're not the best person for that person's life. Sometimes if you say something and you offend them, they leave the friendship, they move on, they meet other people and invest in other relationships and they grow there. But you've robbed them of that opportunity by being the most mid friend ever and having a very surface level relationship anyway. But you don't want to ruin that. Ruin what? That's not beneficial to them.
Yeah, I mean, like if you ever look at your friends that you potentially left in relationships like from a while ago, like school friends, those were school friends, like they had a meaning in your life or whatever it was. Now they're not that person's going to be beneficial to you. And like you're saying, like let that person actually go because they're going to be a better friend for that group of people, or they're going to fit in a little bit better because you also have to choose your time kind of sparingly as well. Like you've only got so much time in the week to have a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody or to help you with what you're struggling with. We were mentioning earlier, like instead of moaning to somebody the whole time, you don't want to be that person or that friend that's always the moaner or you're moaning about this. So try and find friends that only put positive things into your life. If someone's got a bit too much of a negative like aura about them, just be okay with saying, hey, listen, I think we should, move along, or just.
Agreed. I do think that there's a place and time for people to moan and for you to be there for them. Sure. But if you're always seeing the negative in the world, maybe you're just not a nice person. There's nothing actually wrong. You're just your problem. And then you got to be willing to cut those people out. But I think within friendships, there's going to be seasons of complaining and seasons of joy, and you have to be there for each other because that's life, right? Life's not always perfect. Life is actually I hate that saying. Life is never perfect. Not always going to be happy. Maybe never. No, I'm kidding. But Neil, what do you reckon is for like a grown ass man the optimum number of friends to have? Because it's definitely something that's too much.
What is your
friends.
definition of friends?
So let's say close friends, like people who you feel matter to you and you would like them to have a part in your life.
I don't know if there is an optimum number. I suppose that would differ from person to person.
It's definitely not the more the merrier, though.
No, because I think if you're looking at, there's lots of people who are like, oh, how many friends you have? And I'm like, yeah, but how many of those is a close friend? And they'd probably struggle to find one or two even. Like, and often that's a case of like, even like we said in the past, like, yeah, people who have drinking buddies and that's what they do on weekends, but they're not a true relationship. But like, how many close friends do you have that they're going to be there when you say, hey, well, I'm giving up drinking? Are they still going to be your friend? And that sort of thing. Like if you have a true friend, that you should be able to take criticism from them and they should be able to take criticism from you because they know you have your best interests in heart. And like, that's where you're going to get that good positive feedback from. When it comes to that number, no, it's probably a small number, probably like a handful or less, I would imagine, of people, close friends, because if you want a strong relationship, it takes time and effort in putting into that. Having said that, though, you do have those people in your life who you don't have to talk to them for 6 months and you can come back and they're still going to be there for you because life gets busy and they know you have that rapport with each other. So, but those true relationships with people, I don't think it's going to be a very high number if you're looking at close, proper friendships.
Like if I look at the friends in my life who have like, I don't want to say been there for me because it's a bit of a open statement, but genuinely checked in with me randomly for no benefit to them at all throughout my life. So one person, and it's Garth. It's the only person ever. Obviously, family is different. I have had family do that, and I'm very grateful to my family. But friends and random acquaintances, one. And I think that is kind of a nice metric of, did this person check in when there was no real benefit to their life for them to check in? It wasn't, am I seeing you this weekend? It wasn't, hey, can we maybe go together in this business deal? There was like no reason. Just, are you alive? Yeah. What you up to? Working? Okay. Are you happy? No. Yes. Huh? Cool. How are you? No, I'm fine. Cool. And do you need anything? No. Do you need anything? No. Okay. Cheers. It's odd. Like it is odd, but we go away from that conversation going like, that was so bizarre that just happened in my day. I haven't even thought about this person for the last 10 weeks, and I got a call, and that was really nice. Like, I actually am feeling smiley now, and I interact with other people in my life more positively because of that. I think that's a good friend.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I'll say about like people who I genuinely want to keep in my life are people who I know want to see me win. They want to see me grow and succeed. That for me is a big deal. If you don't, or I feel like maybe that I'm not sure about that, I think those are the kind of people where you can say, I'm going to cut the cord here. If you can look at someone and genuinely know in your heart, this person's rooting for me on all aspects of life.
Yeah.
That's someone worth keeping.
Someone that can just like find joy in someone else being super successful. And like you asked Neil how many friends, and then obviously like we chat about that the other day, and like so like you didn't surprise me with your
My love.
with your love for your one true friend. But I mean, it's something that I try to pride
Screw you,
myself
Neil.
on. I've got like a very small list of like people, and it'll go like a month, and then like something will pop up in my head of a thought or a memory or just something in my day. I'm like, oh, I need to just check in with Justin, And I'll just randomly phone Justin and be like, hey, is everything okay? I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. He's like, oh, and the kids like expecting me to ask him about gut health or this or that or whatever. I'm like, just check in.
It's pretty cool quality, G. I respect you.
I try to do that.
I think it's very cool.
Not like once a week, but in thought of something, I try then link it to then checking in with somebody that like has meant a lot in my life. So I've got another friend of mine, a Welsh buddy. We played rugby together for a couple of years. And every now and then I just try to give him a call or WhatsApp. We still, for 2 years now, he had a kid like almost 2 years ago. Still haven't met Brett Jr. But I've checked in with him multiple times over the last 2 years to try have a catch up, He's one of the guys that I want you to meet and just do like a little blood work on him.
It's like my main competition though.
So he's one of the guys that like he's meant a lot to me in my life. And although I don't see him on a regular basis or we don't have a conversation, like I would say the closest guys to me are like you and Neil. And outside of that, like I don't want more friends.
Yeah, but
I
is there
don't
actually
need
place
more,
in your
like,
life for that?
Yeah. I've got the kids and I've got Vix and I've got my family. And outside of that, it's quite hard to. And like we deal with people every day. So it's hard to hear all these struggles or someone's like weight loss struggle or training struggle, whatever it is, because to some degree they're offloading on you as their like mentor. And then like, do you need more than that?
I mean, when I grew up, I lived in a very small town, very small, like 2 kilometers long. So if you went for a run, you had to do like 3 laps of the town just to break a sweat. So there weren't a whole lot of people, and your friendship options were very limited. Even if there were people there, you didn't really necessarily get along. But anyway, I became very close friends with my sister's then boyfriend at the time, who she subsequently has married and has a big family with, and they're awesome. But he became definitely my closest friend, and on the guy side of life, and he was just always rock solid there for me, no matter what. I knew that no matter what I did or how badly I screwed up, whatever, he had my back 100%. No matter what went wrong in my life, I had a Greg who would be there and rot in a jail cell with me or share his food with me, or like, there wasn't even a question. It was so much not a question. I didn't even think about this. I just took it for granted that no matter what went wrong, I was never alone in it. And if I look back at like anxiety levels in my life as they've climbed, obviously as you get older, more stresses come into your life. But I think a massive portion of it is that has fallen away. That I'm in this world with a brother who I know has my back no matter what. And I know he still does. I know I could call him up at any time, but we live in different provinces and we both have very busy lives and we speak way less than we should. And I think if I could have gone through my young adulthood with the same sort of surety as I went through my teenage years with, I'd be a totally different person, for the better, definitely.
Just more confident and
just less worry in my life, because not for any other reason than the same amount of things could go wrong, no problem, but I wouldn't be alone in it.
I think it's one of, like I was just thinking now while you're saying it, it's one of the traits that I'm very thankful from my dad to have, is that I can phone him at any point. It can be a financial issue. I was arrested the one time. It wasn't me that was causing the fight, and I was wearing the same color shirt as my buddy that actually caused the fight. And on camera footage, eventually they went back and they saw, okay, there's that person, there's you. You didn't do anything like you aren't being arrested anymore. But I said to Johnny, because the cops came down to the engine and they're like, that's the guy that it was. I was like, I was buying a pie at 2:00 in the morning after a heavy night drinking. Like, it wasn't me. No, that's the guy. They put me in the back of the van and I said to Johnny, don't phone my dad. And he's like, I'm phoning your dad. I'm like, dude, no, please don't phone my dad. He's like, well, who else? And then eventually they put me in the van, took me. Johnny phoned my dad. Went to the police station. My dad rocked up there. He came up and he's like, guys, just tell me what happened. Told him what happened. He's like, cool, let's sort this out. Went back to the engine, looked at the camera footage, showed that it wasn't me, this, that. So he's always at my back in the harder situations. But in life, it's always given me, I think, a trait to try then show other people that you need to have that one person that's always going to like take a bullet. And I think, I don't know, like we discussed it once, like, will you take a bullet for that person? And I think that's the person that you can maybe have a deeper conversation with.
Agreed.
Again, not every day, every week, whatever it is, but try and take that list of people that you would say like, oh, you're close friends now. And okay, cool, there's only like not even a handful. Try and expand that to 10.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, that person at that point in my life was a very good connection for me because we did X, Y, and Z together. Let me just reach out to them, even if it's a once a year like phone call, catch up, or whatever it is.
Because I think that those friendships and relationships that you're going to go and have these meaningful relationships with, you're going to have to figure out how do you grow that. Because for me now, who is that person going through life with me? You know, I need to develop that. I need to be the one reaching out, because I realize, Neil and I were discussing this earlier, that the biggest predictor of my longevity and health is the people who I'm surrounding myself with on a daily basis. So I get to choose that. And am I doing that wisely? Probably not, because most of the people I am around are by default those people, like the people at work or the people at the school or the patients that I see. I'm not putting things in place to make sure that I'm spending enough time with the people in my life, because I know I'd be healthier and happier for these people in my life, and I do nothing about it. It's dumb. It's really dumb.
But isn't that where your time away from work becomes now vitally important in terms of saying what you say yes to and what you say no to and who you choose to spend your time with?
Absolutely.
Because like in the service industry, it's pretty hard to say no or have whatever. You can't choose who's going to step through your door and who needs your help.
Yes.
I mean, you could, but it's going to make it very hard for you to have a business.
Successful business, for sure.
With the small amount of people on your list, what do you focus on to make time that pleases you? Like, so you obviously please people in a certain way in terms of your clients and your relationships. What do you look for in someone to make sure that it's bringing some kind of joy to your life? Like, people always say to me, does Neil ever speak? You know, they maybe don't approach you because you're not saying like you're not approachable, because
I've been
never
told I
felt
look
it.
non-approachable most of my life.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I mean, do you try and like, I mean, you're not putting up that barrier. Like, it's not like me knowing you for a long period now. Like, people say, oh, but it feels like I can't approach him. But like, there's no ways that I would see that now after knowing you for so long.
Yeah.
Is there something that you try and like?
No, I think like, if I speak for myself personally, I think a lot of people get that impression of me because they see me at work most of the time, and I'm busy with clients and I'm working, so I'm like, there's a certain amount of focus and whatever going on. And if I'm not working or I'm not doing something, then I'm probably taking a break from speaking to people because I have to be with people again in the next few minutes. So yeah, I'm looking for a moment of quietness or to myself to have something before I go into the next thing. So maybe that's why it looks like these barriers. But you know, for myself, like, there's like, I don't have a lot of time. Like Ben said, you're spending a lot of time with people who, you know, you're there, and it's sort of like a forced togetherness sometimes, whatever the case is. So if I'm going to spend time with people away from, you know, what I'm working, what I'm doing in my outside hours, I need to feel that this person has some sort of meaning in my life or add some sort of value in some sort of way, or appreciate the time that I'm spending with them in that. Otherwise, if I'm not, why am I choosing to spend my time there? Because I can have time elsewhere. So for me, it's like, whether it's family or whatever else, like, I mean, I've got family members I don't really speak to because there's no value or I don't need to add that sort of thing. Having said that, like, you know, like my brother would be one of those people that I know I can rely on and call on at any point in time. If I needed something, he would be there for me, and vice versa, you know, if we needed each other. And, you know, the other hard thing, though, is generally those people closest to you, sometimes we avoid those conversations with them because they know they might say the things that we need to hear at a point in time, but we don't want to hear. and that's often where sometimes conflict can arise in sort of close relationships, because that person's going to say the thing that you need to hear, but you might not be ready to receive it at that point in time. But yeah, you have to be mindful of who you're spending time with and what you're giving time up to. And because if it's not of value or adding into where you want to be as a person, or the realm of what you want to feel and behave like and have a headspace in, then it's just taking away at the end of the day.
It's tricky though, because it's difficult to know who those people are in your life. Like, you want to have people who have your back. You want to know that. I mean, it's almost like you have to litmus test the relationship and just drop a biggie and just see what they do. Like, how do they respond to that? That sounds terrible, but I kind of feel like you kind of need that.
Yeah,
but that does happen. Like, I've had clients who've given up alcohol, and all of a sudden they find, like, where are my friends gone? And now they don't have friends.
Yeah.
Or now do they actually find who their true friends are? Or you have those people who would like to make those sort of changes, but then too afraid because they're afraid they're going to lose all their friends. And I'm like, but is that really your friend? I mean, I know, like, as a male, I had this conversation with someone the other day. Like, I said to him, like, I've never drunk alcohol. Like, it's never been a thing. When you're in your teens to early 20s, pushing through, even now, like, how do most men bond? It was like at a bar, drinking, or having those sort of late nights. So, like, I've never had this, like, group of, like, big guy friends or doing whatever. I had, like, one or two closer mates here. Often, it was guys who maybe I was training with, or have those were like my closer relationships, whatever, because we bonded over the iron or whatever we were doing, or sweating, or the hard work we were putting in. But I never had that big group of friends who were bonding over that, because I was never involved in that, because I was not invited to those parties or those things, because I was a guy who wasn't drinking. So for me, I never really had that too much of that superficial relationship around those things, because I wasn't exposed to it through having the non-drinking lifestyle. So for me, I think it's always, I've been lucky in that regard, in terms of, like, in more that sort of sober relationship, you could see what someone was there for or wasn't there for, and you weren't just bonded over something sort of superficial, and you could have those relationships. So there's still guys who I know who, like, I trained with in my teens as high school growing up. Like, we could get together now and reminisce about those times and have sort of a close relationship, because what we had bonded over in those points was something of substance and real. So I think that's also a key factor of, like, what are your friends and you actually getting together and bonding over? Is it something of substance? Is it something of realness where you're getting to know each other? And, like, training is something that, if you're looking at it, like, you can see a person's character if you're training with them in that point in time. Do they give up easily? Are they there to hold your back when you need them to push them through? And, like, that training partner sort of relationship is a good way to actually see someone's character and what they're sort of made of in that sort of regard. So from my side, I've been lucky, like, that's where I've made a lot of closer friends and people through the years.
Yeah, I was trying to add. So, just when you said superficial, there's a couple of conversations that I've had with people, and it has been around some of my clients that are potentially drinking too much. And lately, I've got 5 or 6 clients that I'm talking to about a similar topic. And it's sad, but some of the business, some of the relationships that they've got is evolved around drinking, but it's to get more business or to paint this, like, superficial picture, to try and people please, and to try and please that person to signing a bigger deal or funding this or funding that. And it's quite hard, because a few of them have actually said, I would rather not have this. Like, if I didn't have this job or I didn't have this relationship, I wouldn't be drinking and I would be happier. And it's like they've almost been forced into a lifestyle of friendships that they don't actually want or to actually have around. And it's like, if I think back about some of my drinking days and partying days with these friends and those friends, they didn't have any kind of meaning except for just a potential fun time in the moment. It's like this in the moment time, where a lot of the other relationships that I've got now, and Vicky's one of them, like, she's seen me go from this person to that person. And now that I'm that person, this person that doesn't drink as much, I still try and have fun at these parties. Like, I'll go to 40th, like, I wouldn't drink, but I'd still have fun. And then, like, oh, okay, I don't need alcohol to be this person around those friends that are still friends. And those people see me for, this is now the new Garth that doesn't drink as much and go as hard and whatever it is, but he's still that person. And that's where I'm quite kind of thankful for that handful of people that I'm like, okay, cool, they've seen me be this person and that person, and they're still my friend.
So what if you, like, let's say someone listening to the podcast, you're like, you know what, I would like some more meaningful relationships. I would like some ideas of things to bond over with people. What do you say? Join a gym? a functional fitness facility where you're having conversations? Because you can't join Virgin Active and hope to meet people. It doesn't work like that.
So you've got to do
Maybe like a fighting gym for men. I see a lot of guys going to test themselves and testing their iron in sort of mixed martial arts environments.
I think any kind of sport. So any kind of fitness sport. I mean, if you want to play paddle, if you want to play footy, if you want to play touch rugby, you've been playing rugby all your life. Now you just want to get back into that scene. But you've got to put up your barrier of like, I'm not going to stay at the bar and drink. Like so I've had a few conversations with some buddies of like me trying to find something meaningful because I need more connections. So I need to try find that like team sport thing again. Paddle's been pretty cool, but it's only like 4 people. This and that. I would rather have a team, like a full-on rugby team, but I can't get injured. And then again, it's late in the evenings. They're training on certain times, and then there's drinking involved. So it's like I don't want to go back to playing like an all-boys rugby thing or like an over 35 rugby thing because unfortunately there's a lot of drinking in that environment.
What would you reckon is like the ideal thing? Like if you could make something up that existed?
Well, I think there's also different things. Like I've got a client who he's got friends who they bond over. They have computer games that they play with each other every time, and it's still. But then they'll get together outside of that and still have a dinner or whatever with each other and that type of thing. But they've been doing that for the last 10 years.
So that's what Brendan does.
Brendan and Ricky.
So my boot does that, and they've got a friends group that they aren't even in the same country, and they get together once a week. He has his computer, closes the door, gets his little snacks out, and then they have like an hour or two of gaming, and they play golf or they play.
It's so weird to me, man. Like
I can't do that, but I can see what like I would rather have a poker night where like I know how to play poker, and we just have like a early poker night. We start at 6, we end by 9. And we just close the game at 9 o'clock, and then that's the evening. Like I'd rather have something more like physical, that's maybe not around something that I'm good at, like sport or whatever it is. Something that's completely off topic. Like poker. What would you do? Like if you had an extra night off, let's say to do something where I'd invite you to, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll go do that.
Yeah, I think. Look, if you can do something that you, like you said, you're not good at, or it's going to challenge you in some way, I think that opens you up on a different level, which exposes you in a way that's out of your comfort zone, and that also allows for greater bonding. But I mean, it's also, I think it just comes down to what's forcing conversations that is exposing you to open yourself up more, because in that opening up to your friends and to your buddies or doing whatever else, that vulnerability allows you to forge deeper relationships, which allows a stronger growth in that direction, and that could be in anything. So I mean, it could be even around music or a book club or whatever else, where you could be discussing that book or that song or what these lyrics maybe meant to you, or just jamming on that sort of level and having a conversation about it. So who knows? You just have to find that thing or those things with someone else is coming around that you can have a conversation around, and it's going to have an interest or something in.
I think there's maybe 2 options. There's the option of something that's not comfortable for you.
Yeah.
So like if you like, I'm going to use Vicky as an example just because I think she's a complete opposite to me, but we still have things in common, and she's my wife, and obviously there's a big something that I enjoy about her, but she enjoys reading. So for me, I think she should join a book club, So go, even if it's my mom, her mom, like people that she actually wants to be around, not just a random book club, but do something once a week that they then talk about that. But it's also getting together with like-minded people because they're going to talk. But then she's also got to put herself into a different space of, okay, I'm going to go and try and walk or run with like a running group, that's not in her comfort zone, but she's still going to enjoy a conversation with a random person, to become vulnerable to in a different space. So I think if you have got the time, do 2 things a week. One that's maybe with like-minded people, like train with Neil, talk shit, whatever it is, or join something that's completely opposite, but that you maybe still could enjoy, like a poker night or like me going and playing footy again, but that I do expose myself to other people, but that still is a like-minded thing, So maybe I'm not that good at footy, which, I mean, I played football way back, but I mean, I can still go jam and go and have a conversation with a friend of mine that I know from the soccer club from 10 years ago when my brothers played at Liverpool, like they're still there.
I remember when I was a kid, just for lack of better things to do, we would go camping. And obviously I was growing up at a time where smartphones don't exist. We had like Nokia 3310 and 5110. Those were like the peak of it.
Play Snake.
Yeah, Yeah.
What was it? 1 and 9. Left,
Yeah.
right, left, right, left, right.
And we'd go camping, and because there's nothing to do, literally, there's like, what are you going to do? You have to make stuff up. That was also quite a cool way to get to know people, because eventually you dig deep into real conversations just because you ran out of superficial things within about 15 minutes. And then you're like, what are we going to talk about here? We go for a walk, go hike. And on the hike, it's awkward if it's quiet. All you hear is like heavy breathing, and then you start talking about things that matter. I think that for me would be awesome. Like if I could go camping with someone, even if it's someone who I've recently met, and just hang out, and you get to know, is this someone who I genuinely enjoyed spending time with? No, that's fine. High five each other and don't go camping again. But then you know that's not the person for you, sort of in your life, because it is uncomfortable and there's not much to do. And like, but then you start doing things like tubing down a river and then carrying that tube all the way back up. You're chatting, like.
So I think you've hit it on the head. Is like find something like that, because I took the kids fishing like a month ago, or just over a month ago, for the first time with my dad. Honestly, one of the best 2 days that I've had in a long time, and just the joy that I saw in the kids. And my dad and I had some good conversation again. And then I thought back of like all the fond memories of when we went just camping or fishing or whatever it was. There's nothing around, and James just kept saying on the boat, I'm bored. And he ended up on the last trip now for 3 hours just lying on the deck of the boat.
Yeah.
He ended up catching one fish, and we found the termite mounds on the way out because there was obviously a lot of rain. So the termites were like coming out of the ground in places, making these little like hills. Like, this is interesting. So I showed Ems, we went for a wee, showed Ems, knocked off the top, and there were termites, and I talked a little bit of termites. Then on the way out, I didn't notice, but there were termite hills like this all around that I didn't even notice driving in. So driving in, they're everywhere. Like, you can't miss them. Then when I noticed this, then I showed Ems and I showed James. And on the way out, I'm like, oh, wow, there's like proper sized termites. I'll post them on. And that experience for me with my dad on 2 occasions now, we've had proper in-depth conversations and a lot of silence on the boat.
Yes.
There was probably 20, 30 minutes where there was nothing, just fishing. And James going, Dad, I'm bored. I'm like, well, find something to do. Go through the lures, serve us some cool drink, pass me something to eat, like a lot of boredom. And I think to find someone, like you say, like take someone camping, or just get a small group together and go camp for the weekend. Maybe we should really put together the Skies trip. Trevor Lagerway is doing apparently a men's trip thing that I found out. Yeah, maybe we should reach out.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like Ben said. Like, I mean, I remember we went on a hike once through Newlands, like whatever, and that's probably where I learned more about Ben and vice versa. And like, because you talk and you have a conversation. Even now, when I go walk my dogs or whatever, it's like I'll phone a friend and, hey, what are you doing? Like, do you want to meet me? And like, it's the easiest way to be outside, have a conversation with people about real stuff or sort of what's going in, because there's no interruption of anything superficial around to sort of just go like, hey, let's talk about. And that's simple, that you can do on a daily, weekly basis if you wanted to. It costs nothing. It's free. There's people in your area. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, let's go for a walk and a conversation.
I think that's like a big thing. It's like, who can you be bored with?
Yeah.
Those are kind of probably the people who you'd want to be around.
And that comes down to like how myself and Vicky are just in a good relationship. We can literally sit in the same, we can go through a whole day and not even speak to each other, but still be like fine. And then be like, hey, you're doing that wrong. Okay, you haven't said something the whole day. Now you just told me like what I did wrong. Okay, cool. And then not have an ill feeling of like, okay, this person's an idiot,
Sure.
So try to be, So I think try to take up an hour of a week and find out what you can do to create conversation of a deeper conversation.
Agreed.
And try and maybe reach out to someone that you know is maybe struggling with that. Someone that you feel's spending time watching a shitty series. Find out that they are doing this once or twice or 3 times a week and be like, hey man, on Tuesday night, I know you're watching a series between 8 and 9 doing nothing. I'll come around to your house and we just go for a walk or whatever it is. Obviously not now in winter, but maybe in summer or on weekends. Just while someone's doing shopping, you go grab the other person and go for a walk.
Simple but effective, yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Cool.